Okay, so let's take a look at some variables that we can do on the command window. So on the command window, if I just do x equals 1, nothing's going to happen because there's a semicolon, and as I explained on the introductory video, what happens with the semicolon, it kind of suppresses what you're supposed to see. So, but what I could do is I could just type x, and I could see that my my variable of x is now 1. If I want to do an assignment for another variable, I'll do x or y equals 2 without the semicolon. It's going to show me the value, and then you'll see on the right side on the workspace, it's going to keep track of all the variables that you're going to do in this session. Okay. And then the other thing is, so as I do the assignment, it's actually creating the variable itself. So if you're used to doing other types of programming languages such as C++ or C# or Java, initially you're supposed to declare the variable, define its data type, and then you can do an assignment. In MATLAB, it's a little bit easier. We can just kind of create variables on the fly along with the assignment statement. So now that I have x and y, I can now do a little bit of an operation. So I can say z equals x plus y. I'll suppress it, and then z is equal to 3, right? Because 1 plus 2 is 3. So again, we're just doing fundamental scalar operations of MATLAB. Okay, and remember, all these variables are scalar. Okay, so now there's a good opportunity to show you the who command. So the who command is helpful because it tells you different properties of a specific variable. So what I could do is I can type in who's, and then, well, let's do this. X equals 1, y equals 2, and z equals x plus y. Okay, so we can go do that. And then who's z. Okay, so if I type in who's z, it can tell me the properties of the variable itself. So it says the name of the variable is z, right? The size, you see this, remember I told you, a scalar is just a 1 by 1 matrix. So always remember that everything in MATLAB is a matrix, depending on the size of it. Initially, when you're just using values that are not in matrix itself, they are initially, a scalar is a 1 by 1 matrix, so 1 row, 1 column. You see the size of the actual variable, which is 8 bytes, and it is a double. So everything actually that's numeric, as I said before, is going to be a double. Okay, and initially when we're dealing with scalars, we will be dealing with a 1 by 1 matrix, but you don't right now, don't worry too much about that. But you do have to know that a scalar is a variable in MATLAB that we're using initially, which is 1 by 1. Okay, I can't stress that enough. Let's look at another example, right? So I know in the other PowerPoint slides, I did put a another variable called, let's say, just called str name, and we can say Bob, right? So if we do str name, see that now that's a string variable, right? The other one is a double. But let's take a look at the types of that variable. So if I type in who's str name, you see that now that's not really a scalar anymore. It's going to be a 1 by 3 because of the size of the string. Okay, now if it was one letter, then it'd be 1 by 1, but in this particular case, it's a 1 by 3, and we'll talk about that in the coming lectures. But you still have a matrix. Okay, it's a 1 by 3 matrix. So what that means is it has 1 row and 3 columns. So you see it over here on the right, it's a 1 by 3, right? And in this particular case, it only allocates the space that we need. So each character is going to be 1 byte. In this particular case, we do have 6 bytes, and I'm guessing that's because of the way that it is allocated for a specific string. Okay, so we'll look at that in more detail in the coming lectures. I don't want to go too much into it now because then I'm going to go into the rabbit hole as to why it's three characters and there's 6 bytes. It does have to do with the size of the matrix. So, and then the class is no longer, the other class was, I believe it was a double, right? So it was a double here. In this particular case, the class is a char, okay? So that's good. So now what we want to do is we are now going to, we did this on the command line, so it's not really any type of scripting going on. We're just doing it on the command line itself. What we want to do now is we want to take these examples here and create a script, and we can run it all at once. So let me show you how to do that real quick. Shouldn't be too hard, okay? So I did create already my MATLAB file, but I'll do it again. Let's create another one. We'll just call this, so what you're going to do is on the left, upper left, you're going to go to new script, and then you'll see this untitled. I'm going to start writing the code, okay? Now if you notice, right now it's a script, so until I press run, over here nothing's going to happen. So let's change the values here so you can see something, how the magic happens here. So if I do z equals x plus y, okay, and this actually will not do anything, but what you want to do is you want to press run. You click on run, okay, it's going to prompt you to save this, so I'm just going to save it over here. Let's go to so it's going to prompt you for script name, and then let me just put it under exercises. Excuse me. We'll call this first script. So it's going to say that the following file is not found in the current folder or on the MATLAB path. So what that means is that on the left hand side, your working directory is now going to change to where your script is. If I change folder, okay, so let's do that. We can add to path. Let's just change folder. Yeah, let's change folder because I have all the MATLAB stuff in here. And there you go, right? So right now, if I run it, nothing happens because, as I told you, the semicolon will suppress the output. If I wanted to display on the command window, because everything runs on the editor and then the output will go in the command window, there's a way that you can show the output without inserting the semicolon. But for now, we'll just remove that and just say z. And if you do that, you'll see that z is equal to 5, right? Okay, so I think that's going to be enough for this lesson. And now the next lesson we'll start into covering vectors. And vectors, so there's 3 types of MATLAB, we can say variables, okay? So there's a scalar MATLAB variable, then there's vectors, and then there's your typical matrix. And then within these variables, okay, specifically we start with a scalar. There's going to be different data types. So when I say a data type, then the data type of a particular scalar could be a double or a float or an int, okay? When you talk about a vector or a matrix, the data type depends on the individual value in the vector or in the individual value in a matrix. But we'll get into this all in the next lecture, okay? So hopefully you learned a little bit. Again, we're starting from the fundamentals, and then we'll get into a little bit more complex concepts. So I hope to see you in the next lecture.